kung fu.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Comic Gamer Movie Show. My name is Deshaun, and today I have another action classic for you in the form of 1999's The Mummy, starring Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz. Now this movie is a blast from my childhood. There's a lot of movies that I've done on here that I've said were important to me growing up, and they just left lasting impacts on my imagination and my taste in films and my taste in cinema as a whole. And The Mummy is definitely one of those tentpole movies to me. I absolutely love this movie growing up as a child. Rachel Weisz and Brendan Fraser, well, in particularly Brendan Fraser, was on the come up around this time. This movie, it holds a special place in my heart. I think, in terms of action adventure, I think this movie should be up there, held with some of the best in terms of the structure of an action adventure. Personally, I think that The Princess Bride, in my opinion, is sort of the architect, like the structural example of a true action adventure in terms of the main protagonist and the side characters and whatnot. I think that's pretty much I think that structure, you could take the structure of The Princess Bride and put it in any other context of any other era. You can put it in a sci-fi, you can put it in a western. You can put that structure of that movie anywhere and it would just work. I think very similarly about The Mummy. You got the badass main protagonist and Rick O'Connell. You got the beautiful, bookish, intelligent, bookish, but also kind female lead in Rachel Weisz's Evie. You got the side characters, the entertaining side characters, and her brother Jonathan, and you got a funny side character in fucking Benny. You got funny side characters. You have two great leads. You have an interesting story. It's just, in my opinion, it's the archetype. It's one of the best structured action adventure movies of all time. Also, it is one of Universal Studios' many attempts to reboot the Mummy franchises. Over the decades, Universal Studios has tried many different avenues of trying to reboot both the Wolfman and Dracula, Frankenstein, and The Mummy. They've tried to reboot all these Universal monster movie characters multiple times in many different ways. Now, I don't think Universal Studio has... it's arguably the most successful reboot of any of those franchises from the Universal Studios was this version of The Mummy. And they have tried to do different versions of The Mummy. In fact, there's another version of The Mummy coming out this year that's more horror-based. But, obviously, the terrible Tom Cruise movie, The Mummy, that came out a while ago, that was another attempt. They haven't been able to, at least Universal Studios really haven't been able to reboot one of these Universal monster franchises and make something. Because, before Marvel ever did a cinematic universe, the first cinematic universe that ever existed was the Universal's monsters. And Universal Studios really wants to do that. They want to turn these movies into franchises. But the only one, in my opinion, that they have actually successfully done is this one, is The Mummy. Not only did they produce a great movie in this one, they produced a fun sequel that's not as good as the first one, but it was still a fun movie that made money. But anyways, getting into the story of The Mummy takes place in Egypt in 1925, and we follow a young budding adventurer slash archaeologist named Evie. Now, Evie works in the bookstore. She catalogs. She's smart. She knows all these things about Egypt. She can read a lot of Egyptian. She's very on this shit because, as we find out, her mother and father were adventurers out in Egypt. Her father was a famous adventurer, and her mother was from Egypt. So she's always had this fascination, borderline obsession with Egyptian sculptures and artifacts and you know, all these things about everything about Egypt. But, you know, but one day her brother Jonathan, who is funny as hell, Jonathan's a fun side character because he's that classic character who's a kind of a bumbling idiot. He's sort of a bumbling idiot, but at the same time, he's funny. He's a funny bumbling idiot. And one minute he does something stupid that make you go, why is this dude around? The next minute he does something clever and you're like, okay, I guess that's why he's around. That's the kind of character Jonathan is. He's fun as hell. And the actor who plays him, whose name I am losing her at the moment, but he is great as Jonathan. But her brother discovers this artifact, this key. And inside the key, they discover a map to the legendary land of Hamunaptra. And Hamunaptra is supposed to be like this land of the this city of the dead or some type shit where there's potentially a lot of gold, because apparently Hamunaptra is supposed to be this place in ancient Egypt where at a certain time in ancient Egypt, they used to take all the most important people, pharaohs and whatnot, and they buried them in this one location along with all their wealth, their earthly wealth. And apparently they stopped doing that, but Hamunaptra still exists. And now she's got the adventuring bug. She wants to be like her father and mother before her, and she wants to go and find Hamunaptra. But first, they have to find someone who's been there first, and that's where Rick O'Connell comes in, played by Brendan Fraser. And Rick O'Connell is in many ways, think Nathan Drake from Uncharted if Uncharted took place in 1925. He is this dashing, charismatic, kind of gruff, kind of rough and tumble, like this charming dude. And Brendan Fraser is that guy anyways, but like he plays like O'Connell was inspirational for me because he's an interesting character in the sense that I've never seen a character who's both a badass and sort of a coward at the same time. Like, because he's a badass, but he's not unbeatable. He's not unstoppable. He's not unflinching. You know what I mean? He's not unstoppable. He's not unflinching. There are countless times throughout the course of the movie where he could have died. There are countless times throughout the course of the movie where he's scared and he's running. But, like, it's weird. It's like he's one of the most human action heroes because he reacts because it's not that he isn't scared. There's the old phrase, bravery isn't not being scared. Bravery is being scared and doing it anyways. And nobody epitomizes that than Rick O'Connell in this movie. Because he is not scared. He's just not going to let that stop him from doing what he believes in. Doing what he believes is right or doing whatever. He's not going to let that stop him. But like, he is nervous. He is scared. It's like, and I love that about that character. He's one of the, like I say, he gets his ass kicked. He gets thrown around, but like, he never quits. He takes an ass kicking, but he keeps on ticking. And I love that about that character. Like I say, he's funny, he's charming. Honestly, Brendan Fraser was the perfect leading man of an action movie. I mean, picture perfect. But in the movie, his character was one of the people who found Hamunaptra to begin with. So now they're going to venture out the Hamunaptra to discover if the city's real or not. But along the way, unfortunately, it turns out underneath Hamunaptra was buried this ancient priest of the dam named Imhotep, who, if they find it, may be unleashed. And Imhotep is the mummy. Imhotep is the mummy. And he may be unleashed upon the world. And now everyone is threatened because they found this thing, and it's up to them to stop Imhotep from killing everybody. Now, number one thing about this movie is, it is one of the most violent movies I've ever seen that's PG-13. There are sequences in this movie that I can't believe. I'm like, yo, that is like, I mean, people get stabbed to death. People get eaten alive by bugs. I mean, those beetles, oh my gosh, man. Those beetles, I still have nightmares about those beetles, man. Because I'm like, yo, just crawling up here. Awful. People get eaten alive. People get burned, melted alive. I mean, people die people get their entire body, their essence in their body sucked out. I'm like, dude, people get their tongues and eyes taken out. Dude, people die in some horrific ways in this movie. But they get away with it by classic filmmaking. Shadows, looking away, not seeing it, just hearing the noise of it happens. Like, I say all the time, dude, you can do a lot PG-13 if you're willing to work around it. And they do a great job with that in this movie. Also, there are some really fun shootout sequences, especially with the Mummy. Now, some of the CGI doesn't stand up. Okay, basically none of the CGI stands up in this movie. The only CGI that's not that bad is maybe the sand one, but then again, I'm like, dude, it's sand. It's gotta be kind of hard to make bad looking sand. I mean, come on. But none of the CGI stands up. Now, granted, the CGI isn't as bad as it is in The Mummy Returns, but maybe that's just because they don't have as much of it. Maybe. Who knows? But either way, the cast is fun. Benny is one of the greatest squirrely characters of all time. Like, a lot of great action movies, a lot of great movies have like characters who are just like these little weasels. Benny is definitely up there. There's some hilarious bits with Benny and fucking O'Connell. Just goodbye, Benny. Just chucking his ass off the fucking. Like, there's some hilarious sequences with Benny. Benny is just such a little shit, and unfortunately for old Benny, greed got the best of him, and so did the bugs. But anyways, like I say, this is a really fun movie. Now, granted, the villain is give or take. Like Hemotep, funny enough, Hemotep is treated more like a horror villain, which is where some of the actual horror elements come in. Like, because you learn about him in the beginning opening sequence. Like, they show you about him and what he was doing and how he got put in his fucking... He died in a horrific way, by the way. Hemotep, boy. Boy. But they show you all that and show why he's here, why he was mummified and everything. But, like, overall, you really don't hear him talk that much. You don't really see too much of him other than him being all menacing and shit. Because for a large portion of the movie, he's this undead zombie looking guy. And then later in the movie, you see him in his full glory. It's not really until the sequel where you really get to get a better idea of him as a character and who he is and what he's about. But still, as a imposing mummy, I think they did a good job with him. Maybe the CGI doesn't stand up as much as it used to, which is one thing. But that's really the only problem I have with this movie is that the CGI doesn't stand up like it used to. In fact, I don't even think the CGI was that good at its time. But The Mummy is one of my all-time favorite action adventures movies. I think it's a prototype for it. I think that the two main characters, and Evie and Rick, both have great chemistry together. You can feel it, the sparks between them coming off the screen. It's funny, it's action-packed. Like I said, the movie is basically Uncharted if it took place in 1925. Anyways, I would give The Mummy a 9 out of 10. I love this movie. Anyways, thank you guys for joining the Comic Guy Movie Show again. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Goodbye.